Hello, my name's Sam. Welcome to my channel and happy top 10 best books of 2024 season to all who celebrate. I was really hoping to get this up sooner, but I have already filmed this video and then I went to put it on my computer and there was no sound. So I'm hoping that since I've already babbled through this one time, then I can get through it hopefully in less than an hour, because it took me an hour of filming last time, so we will see. I love watching everyone's best books of the year videos because it gives me like a nice snapshot of their tastes and if our tastes are similar, so I can take some of those recommendations. And I also love just listening to people gush about their favorite books. So without further ado, here are mine. Number 10 is Death Valley by Melissa Broder. This has a very low rating on Goodreads. It has like a 3.5, and that is pretty common for me. Oh my God. Good thing, okay, this candle broke on me on video. My candle broke. A few months ago, and it had a glass thing in here, and the exact same thing happened. Like, I took a book off of the stack, it knocked the candle onto the ground and it shattered. And so there's no glass in here, so it just fell on the ground. But like, maybe I really need to stop using this as a bookend. Death Valley by Melissa Broder. This was actually the first book I read in 2024, and I originally gave it a 4.5, and then I just couldn't stop thinking about it, and it really just stayed in my head because it was so like weird and confusing. The best way that I would describe this book is that it's very meta. So we're following a woman, she's not named, and her dad is in the ICU and her husband has a chronic illness. So she's grieving her loved ones being sick, and she goes away to kind of process her feelings and kind of clear her head, deal with her grief, cope. And while she's doing this, she is writing a book. And in the book that she's writing, it's the same. The main character's husband is sick and her dad is sick, and she goes away to grieve. And while the character in like the main book is away, she goes to California. Is that where Death Valley is? She goes to Death Valley and she is looking for inspiration for her book, and she's looking for like an inciting incident. So pretty much everything that is happening in the book that she is writing is then happening in her real life. So she goes on this hike, she finds this cactus, it has a gash in it, she goes in the she goes inside the cactus, and then it's just weird and random from that point on. And I read a review about this book, and if I can find it, I'll put it here. But the way that the person had written the review really reminded me of like Stefan from SNL, like when he's talking about clubs and he says, this club has everything, and then he goes on to list like the randomest stuff. It's like that in this book. Like, this book has everything. Giant cactuses, sentient rocks, urination, Best Western employees described as vegetables. It's super bizarre, and if you like super bizarre, I think you could like this. Number 9 is Horror Movie by Paul Tremblay. This is another book that has a very low rating. I think this also has a 3.5, and this isn't even the last book on this list that has a 3.5. And I just love Paul Tremblay's brand of horror, just like the unsettling nature of it. Like, it's not in your face horror, it's just kind of like, what did I just read? And is this actually happening? And what is happening? And where am I? And what's going on? This book is following another character that's not named. He's just referred to as the character that he played in the movie Horror Movie, which was the Thin Kid. So you're following the guy that played the Thin Kid in this movie, but the movie was never released due to things that happened on set. And then a couple of scenes got released from the movie, and then it developed this big cult following. And then years later, they are redoing the movie. So you have 2 timelines and a script. You're getting the timeline from when the movie was being made initially, and then you're getting the timeline of the Thin Kid character going through the process of maybe remaking this movie, making a cameo, reflecting on the events that happened in the past. And then you also get like excerpts from the script. And I love when books have like those little elements thrown in, like the script bits. It gives the book for me the potential to be an all-time favorite. I just love that element. And yeah, this was just, like I said, the perfect amount of unsettling, weird. I just love Paul Tremblay's writing and just the way he like makes me feel in his horror book. Like, I was just so like, nothing is really like in your face, scary horrifying that is happening. It's all just like, is this in your head? Like, is this actually what is going on right now? It's just very like vague and in the background, and I just love that. Switching notes completely to a romance, number 8 is The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston. This is following Clementine and Ewan, and Clementine's aunt has recently passed away, and her apartment, her aunt has always told her, is magical, and that when the time is right, when the apartment feels like it's the right time in your life, it will transport you 7 years in the past, but only when you're in the apartment. So Clementine will be in the apartment, it'll be 7 years in the past, and then she leaves and she's back in the present. And she wakes up one morning and there is a man in the apartment who, from 7 years in the past, who the aunt is letting live there for a little bit. And then it's them falling in love in that timeline, and then also meeting again in the present timeline. So it also felt kind of like a second chance romance, because you're getting to watch her fall in love with the same man like in 2 different timelines. With me, for romance, I usually enjoy romances, but I feel like it's pretty impossible to get through a romance that doesn't have like a trope that I don't like, or something that kind of makes me go like, yeah, I mean, it was cute, but like it wasn't like that special. So I do really tend to love a romance that has like a speculative or like a magical element, like the time travel element, because then the conflict doesn't have to come from like miscommunication or a third act breakup. The conflict is like that magical speculative element. And I just remember like kicking my feet the whole time with this, and just like being giddy and just finding it so cute. And I loved that like kind of dual timeline. And yeah, it was just like the perfect like cute romance for me. I was really hoping that I would repeat that with Dead Romantics with Ashley Poston, and I unfortunately didn't love that one, but I am still going to pick up everything that she writes. I've heard not great things about A Novel Love Story, but I own it. I'm still going to read it. I'm still going to read her new release, and I'm hoping that one of those will give me the same feelings as this one. I was debating on the order of these next 2, but I'll just stay in the romance genre and mention number 7, Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. This is a book that I never intended on reading. I had seen it in like everyone's favorite books of the year lists from like, I think like 2022 and 2023. And I just wasn't really interested. I had read The Friend Zone and liked it. And then I'd read Happy Ever After Playlist and hated it. And I just felt like Part of Your World was just going to be another like okay romance or good romance, but I didn't think it was going to be like an all-time favorite. But just everything about it was so perfect to me. You're following Alexis and Daniel, and Alexis is like a big hotshot doctor in the city, and Daniel lives in a small town that he is the mayor of, and he runs a bed and breakfast, and he has like a little side hustle carpentry thing going on, and they meet when her car breaks down and have kind of like a one-night stand, but then cannot seem to stay away from each other, while also knowing that their lives just won't match, but that doesn't stop them from falling in love. And I just thought it was so perfectly done. Like I said before, I don't like miscommunication. I don't like a third act breakup, but I do like when the conflict is like a we can't be together kind of conflict, because then it feels a little bit more realistic. And I like watching characters kind of say like it and like go for it anyways. And I feel like sometimes with romances, like if you've read one, you've read them all. So I'm always pleasantly surprised when one like really stands out to me. All right, switching gears back to horror, we have number 6, Slewfoot by Brom. This is, yeah, totally different than the romances that I just mentioned. I just love the beginning, like the kind of like note at the beginning of the book, which is just, tread wary foot amongst these sacred stones, for here on October 5th, 1666, the devil Slewfoot did take the lives of 112 good folk of Sutton Village. May God save their immortal souls. And yeah, it just perfectly sets the scene. This is following Abatha in Connecticut in the 1600s, and she lives in this like Puritan village, but she doesn't have the same values or views as people in the village, so she's kind of an outcast. But then when she is widowed, she runs into problems with her husband's brother, who is trying to kick her off the land, make her life a nightmare. But little does he know, she befriends a demon named Slewfoot who helps her meet these demands. And the brother is, well, you must be a witch. And then she is like, oh, you want me to be a witch? I'll be a witch, and I'll be a good witch. And it's a good for her revenge situation. And also there's artwork by Brom in here. We got Abatha looking like a hottie. And then we got these creepy like hybrid demon children animal things that are definitely nightmare fuel. And then we got Abatha looking like a hottie again. And yeah, it was great. All right, back to Cozy Cutesy. My God, why can't I keep things on the shelves? Number 5 is The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sangu Mandanna. And this was perfect, absolutely perfect. We are following Mika Moon, who is a witch, and there's a handful of these witches, but they're all kind of told to not be together, not spend too much time together, don't use their magic, they shouldn't meet in groups. They should basically just live isolated lives. But every once in a while the group will meet, but Mika is not content with just being alone by herself. But then one day someone reaches out to her and wants her to teach these 3 young witches how to do magic. And it is a perfect little cozy found family story, and I just loved everything about it. I loved the main character. I loved the 3 little girls in this and all the other characters living in the house. I think there was 4 others, and it was just lovely and just made my heart very happy, and I want to reread it next time I'm feeling sad. Number 4 is The Husbands by Holly Gramazio. This is the other one that I was mentioning had a low rating. This again has a 3.5 on Goodreads. And we are following Lauren, who basically is just your average girl. She has an average life, an average job. She comes home from her best friend's bachelorette party, and there is a man in her house. And it is clear from the pictures on the walls and what he is saying and what is in her phone that he is her husband. And she at first just thinks that maybe she's like forgotten a huge part of her life. But then he goes up into the attic, and then a new man comes down who says he is her husband. And then he goes up, and then a new one comes down. And then she realizes that, oh no, she is in like this parallel universe loop. But then instead of really like doing anything about it or learning anything about it, she's just like, well, I guess this is my life now. And I think that that is why this has a low rating, because there's not really like a big takeaway from this. It doesn't give you any like lessons. I think if people might have been going into this expecting something like The Midnight Library that has those takeaway messages, but instead you're just following a girl who gets a new husband and then sends him back up because he chews too loudly or he makes really bad bolognese sauce. And I feel like I could talk about this book for hours. Like some of the books on this list, like The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches. I love that book, and I know I love that book, but I can't really explain why. I don't really have anything like interesting to say about this, but I could talk about this for like hours, and I need to contain myself. I just find this so interesting because she gets a husband and they are married. Like in this like parallel universe that she's been transported to, she is with this man. She has met him, fallen in love with him, married him for whatever reasons. And when you're in a relationship, you are introduced to people's quirks, but you're introduced to them like early, and then they like slowly build, or like the things like the little like inside jokes that you have with someone, or like the things that are funny to you and the things that you say and do, and like your hobbies and your habits. Like it's going to be different with like every person. Like you slowly mold to this person over time. But then she is just dropped into these relationships like in the middle of them when she as a person is already molded to this husband. And so the things then that she finds annoying about them are like their little ticks that wouldn't have annoyed the version of her that married this person, because you have all that history and all that love for that person. But then when you are just meeting them, you're like, wow, you are so weird and I hate this thing that you do, and nope, get up in the attic. And I just was so incredibly entertained by this book. It made me laugh. I just love a main character that is just like coasting through life. It gives me similar vibes to like Nothing to See Here and Everyone in This Room Will Someday Be Dead. And it also reminds me of the movie Palm Springs with Andy Samberg, where he's in this time loop, but he just accepts that he's in this time loop and he doesn't really do anything to change it. He's just like, well, this is my life. And that's this character as well. Yeah, I just hope that this finds its right audience. I have seen a lot of people on BookTube loving this as well. And so I think that if you like the things that I mentioned, then I think that this book could be for you, and just ignore that low rating. Another critique was that it was repetitive, and it was very repetitive, but I just found it so funny. There's like parts in the book where she spends like longer periods of time with the husbands, but then there's parts where she's just rapid firing husbands, and it's just going through all of like the weird things that she didn't like about them and the reasons that she sent them up, and it was just funny. Like, I just loved it so much. Number 3 is Everything Sad is Untrue by Daniel Nayeri. This book came as such a surprise for me. There's lots of books that I read because I see them on BookTube or they've been recommended to me by a friend, and I just know that I'm going to absolutely love them. I think they're going to be all-time favorites. But then there's other books that I'm like, you know what? Yeah, I'll get to this one eventually. I think it'll be good. I don't think it'll be outstanding, but I think I'm still going to have a good time reading it. And that was this one. I had never heard of it, and I think that is because it is a middle grade, but it doesn't feel like a middle grade. It feels like YA. It also just feels like a memoir because I think it pretty much is a memoir. So I'm getting ahead of myself. This is following a 12-year-old boy named Hosra who goes by Daniel, and he is a refugee from Iran, and he moves to the States. And we're following him telling stories to his class about his life, about Persian folklore, and this is just felt like a love letter to storytelling. It was so interestingly written because the character's name is Daniel, and it says a true story under here, and the author's name is Daniel, and this is his life. Like, he's telling his life story. He's telling tales of Persian folklore that shaped his life, that shaped his family's stories and background, and he's telling it in a way that is fictional, even though it's part memoir. And I just loved how this was written. There was so many things in here. So many, like, I want to reread this book so badly because I just know that it's going to be tabbed to shit. Like, everything in here I wanted to mark up. I was listening to it on audiobook, and just I started like keeping notes in my phone of like things that I wanted to remember, and then I was like, I just need to buy this book. Stop texting me. My grandma messaged me. What did my grandma say? Aw, cute. What was I saying? I can't remember. Yeah, this is shelved as middle grade, but it doesn't feel like middle grade. It feels like YA, but also adult, but also a memoir, and it was just really, really, really good. But yeah, I loved how this was written, and all of the Persian folk tales that were told in this were just so good. So it talks about a lot about as well the tale of Scheherazade 1001 Nights. And in that tale, I'm not going to do it justice like it is in the book, but basically there is a king, and I think his wife leaves him or cheats on him, and he's pissed off, and so he just takes brides and then kills them, and then takes another one and then kills them. And then he marries Scheherazade, and she knows that she is probably going to be killed. So she starts telling the king stories, but before the night is up, she stops the story kind of like on a cliffhanger. So then he's forced to keep her alive because he wants to hear more stories. And the book is told in a similar way. So the author will start a story, but then he'll say, in order for you to understand this story, I have to tell you 3 other stories. And then he'll go off on these other things. And I think if it wasn't done so well, that would be maybe kind of annoying. But the way it was done, it was done well. I didn't feel like it took me out of the first story, and it was just really interesting. It was also, I listened to the audiobook like I said, and the author narrates the audiobook and does an amazing job. Number 2 is another book that I need to buy ASAP, reread, and tab the shit out of, and that is I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Harpman, translated by Raj Schwartz. This book is really short and really impactful, and I don't want to say too much about it because I feel like you really just need to go into it knowing not really anything. We have one narrator, and you're following her and 39 other women who are being kept in this cage, and they're being fed and kept alive, and they don't know why. There are guards, but the guards don't talk, and they just don't really know anything. And then something happens, and they are able to escape. And then you are just following them trying to live in this new world that they discovered once they leave the cage that they've known for the last like X amount of years. And yes, it was sad, but it also felt very joyful at times. It was also a lot about knowledge, just having knowledge, not for any reason, not because you're going to use it, just because you want to have it. And you follow the youngest one, so the one that is the narrator. All these women are older, and she's the only one that is younger. And so she knows that eventually she is going to be alone. And she just wants to know everything possible, not because she's going to use it, again, just because she wants to know it. And the whole book was kind of like that, just them looking for answers and not really getting any. And so at the end, it could maybe feel like, well, what was the point of all of that? But the point was just the book. I know that doesn't make any sense, but I've been trying to say that for like the last like 10 takes, and I honestly don't really know what I'm trying to say, but I'm just trying to say that it kind of has an open ending. Well, not an open ending, it just ends and you don't really get answers, but like I feel like that is the point. Have fun editing that, Samantha. Yeah, I need to get my hands on this physically and just like hug it. Number 1 is Shark Heart by Emily Habeck. This is following a married couple, Lewis and Wren, and Lewis is slowly turning into a great white shark. And for some reason, that is just something that happens in the world that this book takes place in. People just will mutate into animals. And you're following their marriage as they get this diagnosis and deal with it, and you're following Lewis's transformation and also Wren. And this book made me bawl my eyes out twice, which was perfect because I was really wanting to find another book to make me cry. I'd only had 4 up until this point, and this is the 5th one that just made me sob like a mess, and it did that twice. And for half of the story, you're following Lewis and Wren, and then the other half you're following something that has to do with Wren's past. And it was really beautiful and really sad and just written so well. And I loved, again, this is similar to horror movie, how it had like the element of the scripts. This has like, it's written like in like these vignettes, and there's lots of pages that just have like not very much on it. And again, that is something that really makes me, if I already love the book, I'm gonna love it more if it has that kind of thing in this. And I don't really know what else I want to say about this other than that it just had such a lasting impact on me, and I know that I am going to reread it and cry again. And when I think about some things in here, I just want to cry. I feel like when I filmed this the first time, I had other things to say about it, but I can't really remember, and it's getting dark, and I just kind of want to end this video and just know that this book was beautiful and sad, and I loved it. And this is exactly what I mean when I was talking about how I have so much to say about the husband. I feel like I don't really have anything to say about this book other than like the synopsis, and that the writing was beautiful, and that there was so many good quotes in it, and that it made me cry, and that it was sad and like heartbreaking, but also like very sweet, and that I liked the writing style. Like, but yet this is my favorite book, but I feel like I have nothing to say about it other than that I just loved it with like everything in myself. That doesn't make any sense. I'm done talking. Oh God, I'm gonna drop more stuff. Anyways, those are my favorite books of the year. Thank you for watching if you did. Thank you for ignoring this shadow that is on my face. But yeah, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.